Welcome to the Hydrogen 2.0 podcast, where Alberta's energy story evolves. Join us as we explore what's changed, what's working, and what's next from Edmonton to beyond. Here's your host, Kessia Kopecki.
Welcome back to our latest episode of Hydrogen 2.0. This is a special episode because we're actually on location at the 2026 Canadian Hydrogen Convention in April. So it's very exciting. We normally do these episodes filmed virtually, talking heads. It's great to be sitting around a table in person and talking about this with my two guests today. I have Alejandro and Eric. So we're just going to get right into it. I'll grab some information about you. I know a lot of people probably already know who you are in the hydrogen space, but for anybody listening that doesn't, Eric, I'll start with you. Who are you? What are you working on?
Awesome to be here. So I'm Eric Lefebvre. I'm the CEO of H2 Can Fly, and basically we are a national R&D initiative to advance innovation in hydrogen for aviation, obviously, and commercialization as well. So both civil and defense. So we aim to bring everybody together to really solve this the challenging issues of hydrogen, but it's unleash its huge potential that there is in hydrogen, right? So this is what excites us to be here today with the community, not just aviation, but all the modes of transportation, the supply chain. So truly exciting to be here at this event today and be here too.
Thanks for being here. Alejandro, I'd love to hear, and everybody listening would love to hear, who you are and what are you working on?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to the podcast, and thank you, Eric, for inviting me to join you. So my name is Alejandro Block. I'm an environment officer at the International Civil Aviation Organization. We are a United Nations specialized agency in aviation, and my role is predominantly to track our progress towards our net zero goal by 2050. So checking how we are doing in terms of fuels, technologies, CO2, passengers, etc. So very excited to be here in this community today.
Excited to have you. Next question is, how do you two know each other? Eric, you actually introduced me to Alejandro, so you two must go back to some degree.
So do we, the long version, the short version, the real one, anyways, no, we've known each other for a bit through a colleague, but we've known each other at least for over a year now, at least, and we met at, so ICAO runs a tremendous initiative on clean aviation. That's, I think, the first time we met, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
and then we hit it off. We had similar passion for aerospace and hydrogen and basically clean energy overall, and how we could accelerate all that. So it started from there, and then Alejandro, of course, in his role has tremendous expertise and knowledge, and so we're seeking that from everybody because we need to do this as a group. It can't just be one individual or one company. So drawing a lot of folks, and so and just had a few drinks as well, and it was awesome. It was like shooting things back and forth on ideas that we could help to accelerate all this and make this a reality. Yeah, it's like
yeah, so nothing else to add, really. It was a lovely day, and really learning a lot every time I sit with Eric. So it's really a privilege to be here and to be his acquaintance, I must say.
So when we look at H2 Can Fly, you two are fairly collaborative and kind of driving that mission forward.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's I was talking to Eric just earlier, and I see a lot of elements from H2 Can Fly, which are really good examples of how to do things properly. Of course, Eric will talk more about it, but all in terms of the collaboration that they're doing, talking to the whole ecosystem, the aircraft, the airport, the surrounding hydrogen like we're doing here. If I step back a little bit from the global perspective, we see these good practices in other places as well. So in Australia, there's a Hydrogen Flight Alliance. In Europe, there is a Alliance for Zero Emission Aviation. And we do see that these collaborative approaches are very successful. And actually, the ASEA, the Alliance for Zero Emission Aviation, just published a report on Monday, very timely, and H2 Can Fly is quoted quite a few times. So really good
Thanks,
examples.
Alejandro. He's making this happen for us. So that's another big plus right there. Yeah.
People want to know what you're saying.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's great. That international context is huge, of course. But initially we're really focused on domestic, output. So H2 Can Fly, we have 45 plus partners. So it's not a membership type of thing. We are partners. People have invested into H2 Can Fly. So we do R&D. We own aircrafts. We own assets. We're doing projects from Edmonton is going to be a massive hub. We'll talk about that a bit this afternoon. We have a panel as well. We'll be talking about that a little bit, and we'll be announcing some stuff in the near future also with the Edmonton Region Hydrogen Hub as well, and others. But we also have stuff in Montreal, and Quebec, and Ontario, and Halifax, and BC as well. So it's really, what we're trying to do is the cool stuff. It's R&D, but what are you doing with all that at the end of the day? Like, people want to see, like, okay, who cares? How am I going to get to work? How am I going to get to vacation? How am I going to heat my home? How am I going to do all these things with this abundance of energy, which is what hydrogen is, right? It's water, basically, and from there you fuel everything. So we really want to show people what you can do and make it exciting and socially acceptable easily, because it will have environmental impact, which I think is important. But we were talking about that earlier. We're just like over a few beers yesterday and talking about, like, at the end of the day, it's got to make economic sense. You're not going to tell someone, like, it's good for the environment, but it's going to deplete your pocket. Like, geez, who cares about it? What the, you know what I mean? Okay, at the end of the day. So, and we were talking about that too, and we've lost that a little bit in this country. And a lot of times is, economic sense, right? To show progress as you go along. Don't sell, A and then say we're going to be at Z like very quickly. No, that's not true. It's going to take time, right? So we're going to go through some carbon, solutions. So, but we're going to decarbonize, but it's going to take some time. But people are going to see the benefit. And we were talking like the example we were talking about, like trains and automotive, like, for example, right? I mean, that was great. We had that chat. We're talking about that.
Tell me about that chat.
Well, we were just reflecting on what needs to happen to make things happen, and in the economics of things, right? So I was asking Eric, do you remember when there was a global mandate for trains to become electric? And it didn't happen, right? There was no mandate, there was no legislation to make trains go from coal to diesel to electric. It happened because it made sense, because it was cheaper. So the operators started doing it. And this is what we need for aviation. We need solutions that in the long term will make economic sense. And we have projected a lot of future costs of different fuels. And hydrogen is one of the ones that have the largest promise, right? And this is all, it's public information. It's in all reports of the ICAO. It's called the Long-Term Aspirational Goal Report. And there's a section there dedicated to future fuels. And this is why hydrogen is so important, right? As Eric said, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It will be gradual. And we see the progress today. We see airports starting with deploying passenger vehicles or buses or snow sweepers, and then they will move to small aircraft operations. So it will take time, but it's definitely something with large potential.
So why is hydrogen seen as a solution in aviation?
Well, a lot of good. That's a great question, by the way, because first of all, we are looking for ways to decarbonize. Like, obviously today, I think, we talk about some of these stats. Like, I think less than 20% of the population has flown, and I think only like 11% we were talking about has flown multiple times, right? So it's still relatively small in that sense, but that's going to increase over time. But the nice thing with hydrogen is its power density, offsets. So you can go a lot further. You can. They say that weight is the enemy of the aircraft, right? Like, it's not good. So the lighter you can be, the better it is, and it's going to take time. But we have so much hydrogen output here in Canada, so we're almost de facto the leaders, and I think Edmonton is really, centered as being a major hub. But we need to start today, because I think it makes a lot of sense to leverage, water. It's everywhere. Everybody can, you don't need oil anymore. Water, anybody can have it these days, right? So we were talking about that too.
So maybe I'll take a step back and just share the global strategy that we have put together for international aviation. And it's based on 3 pillars. One is we need to reduce the energy we use. Wasting energy is never a good idea. So we need to reduce energy, and we do that by introducing new aircraft, which are more efficient, which burn less fuel. We fly those aircraft more efficiently as well, so try to fly more point-to-point as opposed to taking D routes. The second thing is we need to change the fuel. So we need to move away from fossil fuel, because the carbon dioxide comes from the fuel. The carbon is in the fuel. So if we remove the carbon, we're good. And the third thing is we need to recapture the carbon that we'll still emit. So we have offsets. We have a scheme from now until 2035. But this is not a long-term thing. Now, one of the things that Eric and I were talking before is the particularity of hydrogen is that you don't have any carbon in the fuel itself, right? So once you put that carbon in the aircraft, you burn it or you use it to produce electricity, the outcome of that is water vapor. So there is no carbon in the operation of the aircraft itself. This is very unique to all of the other solutions. We have solutions, we call them sustainable aviation fuels. They're basically biofuels or fuels made from other feedstocks. the particularity of them is that they are near carbon neutral, so whatever carbon was in the atmosphere, we absorb it, and then through a process of refinement we make a fuel, but then we put the carbon back in. So we are sort of carbon circular, and there's a little bit of carbon that gets emitted in the waste, so we don't fully reduce the emissions to zero. But hydrogen is different because hydrogen doesn't have any carbon in it, so it's true zero emissions. So if you go with a CO2 analyzer and you put yourself behind the aircraft, you will read zero, and this is what makes hydrogen from an environmental perspective so interesting, besides all the things that Eric already mentioned on the density of the fuel, the power, and all the opportunities that we will have for that.
And downstream, we talked about earlier too, is economically downstream, it's going to be effective as well, cost effective, right? And that's really important. Because jet fuel today or just fuel for cars today is cheaper than what's out there today. Even relatively to batteries, cars are more expensive, charging it and everything else. There are some challenges there. So I think with hydrogen, we're removing a lot of those issues. So I think it's a great time to do it. It's going to take time. Nobody's going to oversell to say we're going to be a hydrogen economy in a year from now. But already today, I think what we were talking about today this morning, the output is what you're saying in terms of hydrogen use in aerospace.
Well, the projections. Well, right now the hydrogen use is experimental, basically, right? But the projection to 2050 is that we will use about 20 million tons of hydrogen. And just to put into context, if the global economy moves in the way that it's aligned with the Paris Agreement, there will be about 500 million tons of hydrogen, low carbon hydrogen, available in 2050. So we would only need 4% of that hydrogen. So it is possible.
Do you know how much, and maybe you can't answer this question, but do you know how much, like ratio-wise, that would displace existing fuel solutions?
Yeah, so the roadmap that we have established in our long-term aspirational goal foresees that about 2% of the energy use in international aviation would be hydrogen in 2050. This is about 5% if you include both domestic and international. Now, this doesn't sound like a lot, but 2050 in aviation terms is tomorrow, right? Like we are closer to 2050 than we were to 2000, just to put into perspective. An aircraft takes 10, 15 years to be developed. So actually 5% is quite a lot. And the issue, it's not an issue, the thing is that the world doesn't stop in 2050. So what we see post 2050 into the 2070, 2100 is quite a sharp increase of that potential, right? So 2050
might kind of be that tipping point where everything's proven and implemented and deployed, and then you can start scaling it.
Yeah, that's right. I think the reason why we focused on 2050 is because a lot of the global climate targets, and by the way, never mind. I was going to say something, but I stopped. A lot of these climate targets were focused on 2050, right? Reaching net zero for the planet in 2050. So we are following suit, but it's very important to remind ourselves that 2050 is not the end of the road. That's and right. The world continues after that, and what happens after that, right? Yeah, a lot of times too, I mean, a target is a target, and if it makes economic sense, it could come earlier too, right? So it all depends on the amount of money is being poured into it, and the adoption. And adoption comes with ease of use and having the ecosystem around it, and so I think that's a key thing. But yeah, we need to have targets, obviously, but there's way beyond 2050. There's no doubt. Yeah. And maybe just to put into perspective, because some of the people listening might think 2%, 5%, that's nothing. That's 10,000 aircraft. 10,000 aircraft flying and operating in 2050. The Europeans just published the report, and they said 5 million flights powered by hydrogen in 2050. That's a big number. So these are aircraft that have to be built. All the materials, all the supply chains need to be understood. The infrastructure at the airports, we're talking hundreds of airports, have to be equipped for hydrogen. And we have less than 24 years to do it. So it is quite an ambitious target. Looking down the road, obviously we can't predict the future, right? But when we look at other sectors, or maybe connected sectors, is there any way that these other sectors that are outside of hydrogen directly can benefit from what's happening in aviation and the innovations that we're going to be seeing? No, absolutely. That's a great question, and that's exactly what it needs to be. So, while we're focused on aviation, I think we're seeing a lot of touch points with other sectors as well, right? It could be, we can talk about other modes of transportation, we can talk about manufacturing, we can talk about housing, we can talk about a number of things, and so it needs to have a wider benefit concept across the board. But all this is being achieved. I think one of the points that's really important that we've always talked about a lot is through a collaborative environment. That's one of the main points of H2 Can Fly was from its inception about a year and a half ago was we need to have more of a national strategy to do things together.
I won't name them, but there's a few companies that went on their own. They got lots of money. That money ran out, and they're basically on their way out or they're gone, right? So we need that sustainable aspect to financing and funding and research to show progress. And so today, in a panel that we're going to talk about this too, is we want to show that there's challenges, but there's also some successes. We need to drive, to work on that as well. And I think, and then I'm seeing a lot of interest from shipping, from railway, from the truck industry, and also even from the housing industry in terms of how do we all work together, because at the root of it, we all have the same problem. And so I think we can work together. But everybody will tell you, though, aerospace is the most difficult to decarbonize. So they'll say, if you guys lead it and you can do it, we can apply it everywhere at the end of the day. And I think this is what we're trying to do, right? It's
and there's a beautiful story, if I may use that word on this, because today aviation it's a huge driver for economic growth, for cultural growth. We are here today with you thanks to aviation, because there's no way I could have driven my car or rode my bicycle to come to Edmonton from Montreal. But 4 hours I was here, so it is wonderful. But aviation is also, especially around the airports, is a source of emissions. It's a source of noise, and particularly in places that are very sensitive to this is a problem, right? So it is a problem for growth in some regions. Now, the aspect, looping on what Eric said, of hydrogen for aviation and decarbonizing aviation brings a very different story, where aviation actually becomes an enabler for renewable energy. Certainly you have an airport with hundreds of tons of low carbon hydrogen stored there that enable the use of buses driving on hydrogen, cars, taxis. You can supply hydrogen to the homes surrounding the neighborhood. So suddenly the airport, from being a source of emissions and noise and nuisance for some people, becomes a solution for green energy. And this is quite powerful. It's quite an interesting proposition. And this is why a lot of these big projects, and here in Edmonton we see it, loop on this idea of the hydrogen valleys or the hydrogen hubs, and a lot of them are around the airport, because this is going to be one of the big users of airport, and definitely with benefits. And H2 Can Fly, you're doing a lot of this thinking as well.
Yeah, it's pulling everybody together, and I think here in Edmonton it was great to see. I think there's a neighborhood that's hydrogen like fueled or something like that. So it's amazing to see all that. And the other one too I didn't mention, but I need to bring this up because it's really important, is defense. So we talk about all the different sectors, but defense also will be looking at this, and not because they obviously it's going to decarbonize, and that's really important, but they're looking at efficiencies essentially. So if they can remove the logistics of oil and diesel and other things, and start looking into hydrogen, then suddenly it's cheaper, it's more cost effective, it's easier. So the whole operational aspect is better. Now whether or not they use it in theater of war or something like that, that's something else, but that's going to help de-risk, because the regulatory impacts on defense is very different than, say, that Alejandro knows so well, like to fly an aircraft today. It's like, it's got to be certified, there's got to be like a million checks to go through it. It's very complex. But on a defense side, huge applications, whether it's gas, whether it's liquid hydrogen, and even solid state, right, which is probably where we're all going to be heading in the near future, which is really cool in terms of what we can do.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke, a lot of the things we were telling you, we always say we spoke about this because obviously we speak a lot. When we get together, we just go on, it's idea flow. But I was just telling Eric that I lived in the UK for a while, and I love to go to the aviation museums. I'm a bit of a aviation nerd, and I love to see all the different concepts that were there, and a lot of the things that we see being researched today, like open fans and even hydrogen and swept wings backwards and forwards, and all of these concepts, they were built and they were flown maybe once, twice, and then now they are in a museum. And they were flown sadly in a time of the Cold War, right, where there was no end to investment on defense and on all of that. It was a priority. So it's really interesting what Eric says, because there is, I think, an opportunity here where we see a lot of investment today going into defense to say, well, can we piggyback on these investments and on these technologies to de-risk and to mature some of the critical technologies that will be required to fly passengers on a hydrogen aircraft as well.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Okay, moving on. Switching gears.
Okay. All right, we're switching gears.
Okay.
So, away from defense.
We've got
No, it's good. I actually, I like this question I'm posing about, like cross-sector opportunities and benefits, and then we lean into defense. But then just before that, we were talking about cross-regional collaboration, and it seems like that collaborative spirit and that collaborative need and demand goes beyond jurisdictions. It's also, up and down into all of these different opportunities for technology and industry and government as well. So when we're looking at that as well and kind of scaling this, and when we're especially looking into the future, what kinds of, I guess, looking at your goals, right? What kinds of policy or regulatory barriers or obstacles are at the forefront that we're maybe working on getting over right now that you can see or predict?
Yeah, well, I think Eric has touched on some of it, but a flying aircraft sits on hundreds of thousands of standards, right? Everything is standardized. From the moment the aircraft lands, taxis, the passengers deboard, the refueling, onboarding of the passengers, everything is standardized. The way you talk to the control tower. So one of the big barriers will be, and you were mentioning before, so I don't want to steal your thunder, but it's going to be on the certification and standardization of all of these things that just don't exist today. Some of these standards might take 10 years to be agreed, right? And they have to happen, and this is why ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization, is involved in this, because aircraft fly from one country to the next. So all of these things need to happen in a coordinated way. Everyone has to do it exactly the same way all over the world, and it is a challenge. But I know you have thoughts about this as well.
No, it's well said, and so it's a really great question, by the way, Kasia, because there's a lot of things to unpack here. But suffice it to say is that what we're trying to do is having building blocks across the country, so it's all the regions are participating, right? For example, and to advance that innovation, we want to also show flights and show active transportation happening. So, and also it has to have a business viable output too. So you're doing something not for the sake of tapping you in the back and saying we did it. You want to have some type of commercial application moving forward. And the other thing with that is having a keen eye on working closely with the folks that deal with standards, codes, and certification, because the governments today, Transport Canada, I think they're heavily tasked with resources as well. So they need to learn as they go along. So that collaborative environment is super important at the end of the day. And to ensure that we have the right level of funding to make this happen too. So it's government funding, it's private funding, and it's everybody gets involved. So that collaborative environment is incredibly important. I've heard a lot of talk about that today at the show and yesterday as well, in terms of we got to do it together, right? And we need to share, not just also in Canada, obviously we want to share within the regions, but internationally we want to know what our friends in Europe are doing, and in the Middle East, and of course in the US a bit less, but still there's lots of activities going on. But I think at the end of the day, what we're seeing here is the potential for Canada to come out of this as a real leader in this new energy space of hydrogen, which is really cool for productivity, the purchasing power of the average Canadian, and some really cool stuff coming out of it right at the end of the day. So it's not just flying into something, but other applications that we've talked about, right? That'll be really cool. And that's what we need to sell to the general public is hydrogen can really unleash a lot of things that will renew things and also drive the cost down significantly. And that's the main message at the end of the day, I think.
I really appreciate both of you when I'm asking, what are some challenges or obstacles? And yes, we're talking about the challenges or obstacles, but you're also very thoughtful and decisive about what are the solutions to overcome those and what are the implications to overcoming them, which is really great. So I appreciate you getting into the weeds on that one.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
So I just have one more question, well, at least on my piece of paper here, is when we're looking into the next 12 months, what can we expect from H2 Can Fly? What can we expect from what you're working on?
Eric, go.
Yeah, well, thank you, Alejandro. I appreciate it. Buy you a beer later. So yeah, for H2 Can Fly, I think for us it really needs to show progress as we go along, like in the near term. So I think we'll be seeing some interesting outputs here in terms of Edmonton, certainly working with Edmonton International Airport, and showing how there may be aspects of how infrastructure works. So how do we work with regulations, safety standards, training? We also didn't talk about, this is a huge thing, is academic outreach, right? So working with universities to ensure that the youngsters coming, the younglings coming from behind are well trained to take this on and to lead it forward, because I think we need to drive that too moving forward. So we have an potential issue that we need to make sure that we have those resources behind us. But it's really connecting and showing that Canada is making some measurable steps. So we want to show some aircrafts flying, so not just a big aircraft with 4 engines, for example, that we're working on, but also a helicopter, also a drone, and eVTOL. We talk about advanced air mobility, which is super cool, because we want to be able to fly somewhere, because driving is okay, but traffic congestion is only going to get worse, I think, regardless if it's battery, hydrogen or not. So having short distances capability would be really cool. So it's really to show things that people can really understand, right? We were talking about that with our coffee too, is like, what is it that people can sort of relate to? And understand and say, yeah, I like this. Because if we don't do that, I think we're going to lose that momentum, and I think with that comes also the required funding to support all this, which is not small. But I think we're setting that up quite nicely.
That's a lot to look forward to in 12 months.
It is, but it needs to be there, because we'll talk about it today again. There are significant challenges. We're not going to shy away from them, but we also to show that there's also some highs, right? There's lows, but the highs, and we're going to solve them. There's a technology in hydrogen called fuel cells that we use. It's an electrified. It's like a battery, if you want, but you run through hydrogen. In the next 3-4 years with R&D, your efficiency is going to be like 40-50%. That's crazy. So things will just get better and better very quickly.
Yeah. Alejandro, what are you looking forward to in the next year?
Well, I look forward to many things, but I'll tell you a little bit of what.
Keep it to hydrogen, will you?
And whatever vacation.
How long do we have? No, seriously, the organization that I work for moves at a slightly lower pace than H2 Can Fly and many others, right? So we depend on our member states, and we work through consensus and agreements. But in the next 12 months, I can point out to a couple of things. We have a program for training, capacity building, and feasibility studies, mainly for sustainable aviation fuels, the biofuels that I mentioned before. Now, this through a resolution at our assembly, this has been extended to the whole basket of measures for net zero, right, including hydrogen. So now it's going to be called the ACT-LTAG. It's an acronym, Long-Term Aspirational Goal for Aviation, and ACT is Assistance, Capacity Building and Training. So we will be doing a lot more focused on hydrogen, so webinars, maybe feasibility studies. It's still to be seen. We also run our yearly event that you mentioned, Eric, the Climate Week. So we'll have one now in July. We'll have one the next year. And this is a forum where we, like here, but it's aviation focused. We bring together experts to talk about the latest and greatest on aviation, including hydrogen. And there's also a technical piece of work happening, partly of what I mentioned before, focused on the aerodromes. So the aerodromes, they are standardized. There are rules. There's the Annex 14 of our convention, where if you want to build a new airport, you would go open that, and they would say, okay, this is the length of a runway, this is the width of a runway, this is the turning radius, blah, blah. There's nothing on hydrogen there. So there's been work ongoing behind the scenes on identifying those gaps and what has to be modified so that hydrogen can be part of those annexes. And this is a working group that has just launched in ICAO. So a few things will unfortunately not going to deliver a new fuel cell, but we're trying to move things so that when those fuel cells are mature and flying, then we are ready to go so that those aircraft can enter service in a safe and timely manner.
Yeah.
It sounds like your organization will be, especially over the next 12 months, a really good resource for people to keep up to date on what's happening and kind of connecting to these developments.
That's definitely what we're aiming for. So
And the thing is, really quickly too, it's really important to say that technically we can fly with hydrogen. It's not an issue. It's happening already. Like, we can do it. The question is, can we do it efficiently, and can we do it with the regulations? And so that's what we're working on. So I just want people to understand that from a technology standpoint, we can do it today.
The technology is there.
It's there. We can do it. We can probably cross the ocean. Airbus has been working on some stuff as well. Many others. We have a partner that's going to talk this afternoon on a fireside chat too, talk about what they're doing with the helicopter. It's happening. So we can do it. It's just, how do we bring it down in terms of cost and make it scalable and the certification, so that everybody's happy, and to sit on a plane that that has hydrogen on it, and remove some of the negative thoughts from the past, because hydrogen's been around forever, by the way, right? It's nothing like we just discovered, hey, there's hydrogen like 2 years ago. It's since the 1920s we've been dabbling around with hydrogen all the way through, right? So
Perfect. Well, thank you both so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
I'm
awesome
happy we
to be
got to
here.
do this in person, and I'm happy we got to learn more about what the aviation industry is looking at with hydrogen. I think that's really exciting, and it's definitely an emerging and growing conversation. So I'm excited to continue these conversations with you as things develop. So Alejandro, Eric, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of Hydrogen 2.0. If you are looking to learn more about the Edmonton region's hydrogen economy, learn more about the Edmonton Region Hydrogen Hub, or get in touch with us, you can visit hydrogen.ca or send us an email at hello@hydrogen.ca. Also, feel free to follow us on LinkedIn, the Edmonton Region Hydrogen Hub, to stay up to date on all the news and all the activities happening in our hydrogen economy.